Welcome to EdUp Curriculum. I am your host, Nicole Poff, and today I'm really excited. I know I always say I'm excited, but I'm excited to dig into a school a little bit deeper today. They're doing awesome things. There is so much content we're going to go over today, and I'm actually pretty excited because I think we're going to have someone else come on in a couple weeks to go over anything we don't cover. But before we jump in, I want to introduce our guest. Actually, I want to have him introduce himself. So, Anzar, can you please introduce yourself to our guest? Just share a little bit about yourself, anything you want to. And
Sure.
thank you so much for being here. Sorry.
Yeah. Hi, Nicole. Thank you for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure. Um, I have multiple different experiences that perhaps would explain later why I am in higher education. By training, I am an experimental physicist. But I never was in a singular box of a physicist. When I started, I was also doing theater at the same time, and I was also someone who was a radio host for a good 10 years. And all of those experiences gave me a very good understanding, or somewhat a deeper understanding of human experience, of expression. And because of the virtue of a degree in higher education, I did pursue a career as an academic. I'm still here. Um, but one of the most unique things that happened to me very early on in my career was an opportunity to build a university from scratch. So in 2014, I became a part of a community that was making the first liberal arts college in Pakistan, which does not have a presence of a liberal arts experience. So that was 2014, and building a new institution is nothing prepares you to build a new higher education institution. It does not happen every day. And I was a part of another large institution before, an R1 institution before, and there our work as faculty is very limited, particular to the kind of work we do, and within that work, uh, very special work within that domain. So if I was a part of the physics program, I would do a very little part of the physics program. But building a new university requires understanding infrastructure, curriculum, student experience, admissions, their careers, faculty hiring, faculty management, development, library services, the registrar's office, operations, fundraising, huge gamut of things. And the founding group did not differentiate what kind of roles they were going to play. So we started learning anything and everything we could about higher ed. And this was a great opportunity for me to experience the higher education experience in the United States. I was sent by my university back home to understand how does this work in the US. And my first visit was towards the R1 institutions. And I came back not understanding a lot about what good liberal arts undergrad experience is. And on my subsequent visits, I started visiting top liberal art colleges, Wharton, Lafayette, Union, Harvey Mudd, Pitzer, Pomona. And that really propelled me in a very different direction. And for the past 10 years, I've been acting as a higher ed professional. I have worked on many different parts of higher education, like building innovation and design and innovation labs, working completely or designing completely new gen ed curriculum, and most importantly, completely rethinking the frameworks around teaching and learning, that what could faculty development, faculty experiences, and in-class experiences could look like, and in the end, what should a student experience look like. And all of that has changed dramatically post COVID as well.
Thank you for sharing that. And he's being very modest. There's a lot more that he could share about his experience and the wonderful things he's done and is doing. Um, I've been thinking about this all weekend because I'm really excited to jump into the current work. That was a good background. You gave good lay of the land. You're currently at San Francisco Bay University, which has a really unique history. Like, I have to admit, I did not know anything. So, just quickly, how would you describe San Francisco Bay's university journey and then transformation?
Yeah, so I'm the chief learning officer here, the founding chief learning officer at San Francisco Bay University. This is an institution that is designed to rethink higher education in any way and every way possible. There are no questions that the university is not asking. Why do we have a 3-year or 4-year experience? Why do we have disciplinary boundaries the way they exist right now? Why do we have the higher education management system the way it is designed? Why is higher education so slow to respond to the very quick changes which are happening around us? Why is higher ed so exclusive? It continues to be unachievable for many of our student communities. Why is higher ed at the same time also inaccessible to a lot of students, that the system, but through no fault of the kids, um, disenfranchises them from becoming a part of university experience, like really deciding what their career and future could look like? So it's this institution has an interesting history. Started as a polytechnic institution, but in 2021 it completely redesigned itself, and a new brand was born. The San Francisco Bay University name itself is 3.5 years old, and the university has undergone a dramatic change in the past 2 years. And I think the pace at which that change has happened is only because of the nature of the institution, where it's very flexible, very agile, and constantly questioning what should be a different and a more relevant or optimized framework for higher education that benefits all people involved in the process.
I think you guys are kind of like the opposite of higher ed. I have big personal issues with higher ed, these systemic issues, right? Like we have these long governance processes and we're so slow to it's like moving a cruise ship, it feels like, you're like slowly moving. And what really just interests me in San Francisco Bay University is the model that you guys have built, right? This ability to be nimble and react instead of getting stuck in governance processes for like 2 years. Um, you're literally the opposite of what traditional higher ed is, but a good model of what higher ed should be, right? There's a very big distinction here of you guys are setting a really good model. And that's what I'm excited to talk about, because I feel like sometimes in higher ed, everything is really theoretical, right? We know in theory that we should be changing and that our student has changed and that the environment has changed, but we just talk about it versus doing it. And you guys are doing it. Like the things that you guys are putting into play is awesome. So let's start with the gen ed, because that's a really cool initiative. So you guys have taken a pretty fresh approach to gen ed. Um, just let's start there. If you just tell us about that.
Yes. One of the most interesting things in higher ed is that there is an existence of a common curriculum that assumes that students will be trained in certain areas of both thinking and doing, and they are pretty disparate, and they're designed to be like that. And the idea is that perhaps at some point in life they're going to make those connections together, perhaps with their major, or some people might make those connections, some maybe never make those connections. For us, this was an opportunity to completely rethink what a common experience could look like for students. And this was also an opportunity to create something that really transcends disciplinary silos, because the general education is supposed to be a window where different experiences are happening outside of your major. But we started backwards. If we are thinking about creating courses using backward design, or experiences using backward design, where do you want people to be? We did exactly the same thing with a gen ed curriculum. And instead of thinking, how do we use maths and physics and philosophy and literature to do XYZ, we went backwards, like, what is it that we really want our graduates to achieve? And for that, our presence, our physical location in the Silicon Valley was a very important factor. So there were lots of conversations that started to happen with the main stakeholders in the Silicon Valley, and asking what is particularly happening in their industries, and what are some characteristics, attributes that the graduates are bringing that essentially end up being the key to their success. And so many different responses started to come in, and we synthesized all of those, and it turned around that there were five different areas where they thought if students are demonstrating capacity, then the success is really possible. And we designed those categories to be five distinct one. We call them student identities: a tenacious leader, interpersonally gifted, tech trendsetters, and four of them, an enlightened thinker. And these four of them seem generic, but then we divided them into lots of small, achievable bites. That what does an enlightened thinker look like? What does a tech trendsetter look like? Not a follower, but a trendsetter. What do they look like? What's happening within? And that started to flow back into skills, that started to flow back into which particular intersection of disciplines can help you develop those skill sets. And then we also started to think that instead of preparing only the thought, we should also be able to connect it with action. And that action should also be created with meaningful creation. And so we started thinking about all courses will be designed from this perspective that first transform your thought, just not make you think. Making you think is easy, but transform your thought, and then connect that with some sort of an action that you should be able to demonstrate that transformation of thought. And in the process you would be practicing it constantly, and we called it the agility praxis pathway. Be very agile, understand the idea of praxis, but then create multiple pathways that connect with what's happening. So the end product was not a typical gen ed, but 10 how to courses. And if it's a question, if it's a how to, you're anyway exploring, all right, how do I go about this? And we're building it right now. We have designed the first 4 courses. The next 3 are in the process of being designed. They will be launched in fall. But again, just to give you an idea what happens, the first course in the curriculum is um, at the intersection of human-centered design and personal epistemology. And you connect both of them to help students understand their life from the perspective of multiple life domains, and then help them understand what's happening in each life domain, who's influencing it, where are they at this particular moment in time, where do they want to be, and what is the whole network of influences that they should be first be aware of, and second try to take control of, and third do something with it. And this process happens in the very first semester of the university. It's different because there is no textbook that teaches you this. There is no singular resource that we provide to the students, say, hey, read this and you'll be a great person. It's a huge self-discovery process, which again, as I mentioned, doesn't just make you think, but then takes you to the next step, that how would you change your thinking? So I used to think, now I think framework. And so this particular course starts at the very beginning of their journey, and constantly looking at the idea of how do I know what I know, and constantly thinking about the idea of epistemology by putting oneself within the center of that question. At the same time, they start taking a course on how to tell your story. So instead of a regular writing course, one starts pulling in from multiple different disciplines, and also starts thinking the idea of how must I or how can I express myself, which is not just a text anymore. Many people think that perhaps a resume is who you are, but we know that it's not. And it's not just the textual medium in which you present who you are. There are many ways. There are visual, audio mediums, other ways of expression. And we want our students to understand themselves, understand their stories, understand many other different stories, and then start thinking about how to frame themselves again within that. The third course that they take within that experience is called How to Lead. And this How to Lead is again a course that looks at multiple historical figures across time, and doesn't judge them on the modern frameworks, but tries to evaluate in that particular space and time and the political and social realities what was being done, what can you extract as leadership abilities, and then think about the contemporary world where we are, what different choices could be made, what processes could take place, how our thinking framework should evolve in response to different challenges which are emerging around us, and what should a good leader look like. And then they do practice something as a part of that. They have to think about creating leadership movements, and how does it start. And the fourth course that already exists again is How to Communicate in a Global Context. And that's pretty important, especially again, the reality of the Silicon Valley is that when you make something, you're not just making it for folks in California or in the United States, you're making it for all the world. And think about any product that comes out. You have your laptops, you have phones, they're not made for a certain part of the world. They're challenges that anyone in the world should be able to relate to them. And when it comes to partnerships and ideas, and this um, and the world where a lot of different cultures and communities are speaking to each other, understanding what each culture expects is critical. So a strategy that might work here might not work in Japan. And companies have these presence everywhere, and they would love to have employees who are able to very quickly understand the context within which communities operate. And instead of bending those communities to the way they expect those to work, you quickly understand the right frameworks and the flexibility to continue to do the work, but within the norms and culture of a different community. Again, we practice that a lot. The gen ed courses, these four, I've only spoken about the four because they've designed those four. The other are how does your brain work at the intersection of biology, neuroscience, and psychology. We have a course that how can we thrive using scientific inquiry and the future of sustainability. Then other courses which are a part of that. But what we do, Nicole, in these courses is the way we teach them, and I can come back to that later. That what is very different about going about teaching, about designing these courses. But this is what the Gen Ed is about: asking many interesting and important questions, at the same time putting them in action and constantly making them relevant to the world in which we live in and operate.
There's so many things I love about this. One of the biggest things I think about myself as an undergrad student, and it was like, just get through those gen eds. I mean, that's what my counselors always told me. Just get through them. Just get through them, and then you'll get to the fun stuff. Then you'll get to your major. You guys, like, out the gates, you're like, value, 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 value. And I think even when I was thinking about kind of the first course, I think like new student orientation, we have students think about time management, the different hats that they're balancing, right? We have them consider these principles, but it's maybe just like a couple quick lines. You guys are like very deeply digging into this in a much more meaningful way. And I just can't, I think about being a student in those classes, right? I'm like, I needed this. I needed this when I was an undergraduate. And I think it would have brought me into the school, also myself, as just why this is relevant for my future. If I'm thinking about me as a person and I'm thinking about my future, then I see the degree as a critical part of where I want to be. So I'm wondering too if long term, if this will help with retention, right? Like there has to be some sort of retention strategy baked into this. Yeah.
That is correct. Correct. The students, when they are asking these very important questions, they also understand their role and place in college. And this is directly tied to the idea of retention, because students can feel lost, and there are lots of reasons why retention can be impacted. And through this course, one of our goals is really to help students identify some of those challenges that they usually either don't express or find out or engage with later on. They are brought forward, and the more meaning you give to an undergrad as early as in their journey, the more likely they are to stay there. And we have to understand their challenges. We have to understand the support systems that we should create right away to prevent any future challenges that they're going to face, and then give them a place where they feel safe, heard, and they also see that they're constantly growing in that. And you create those spaces for students, and the likelihood of them going through the 4 years, or whatever the period is, 3 years, is going to be very high.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't wait to see, because you guys, this is new, so I can't wait to see your data 4, 5 years from now. Um, how many students, like, have you heard any sort of feedback yet about from students?
Oh yeah, lots of feedback comes from students, and very interesting things have happened. In the beginning, students are somewhat shocked that what this course, the content is me. I am going to unpack myself as a part of this course, and that's a challenge. What kind of pedagogical approaches would work within that framework? But then you see them maturing very quickly within the course, where the thoughts become more and more reflective and deep. And the students, the mini experiments that they design for each life domain become more and more robust. And the conversations that start happening towards the end of the semester, where students are leading the conversations, are very thoughtful. The first time I taught this course, the first time this was ever launched, was last fall. I co-taught with a colleague who's a co-designer of the course. And we created a wall of expressions for students about what has happened in this. And they said, can we leave notes for the students who are going to take that in spring? And
That's
this is
cool.
where I found out, wow, they want to talk to more people about about this course, and they wrote some very interesting insights that, hey, this is what we think. If you do that we figured out in week 2 or 3, we want to give you a heads up. If you do that, this is going to be very insightful. Many students come and say that these courses are one of the primary reasons they get up and come to college, because they feel it's so different. There is no long lecture, there's no monologue, there is a lot of action. And this course is taught in a studio format. It's a 3-hour long format. But time really flies because everyone is working. There's a lot of buzz. And in general, the community seems to, and we're designing it in such a way that the community can borrow these as projects that they can continue to run on their own with their communities. For example, there's one session on um, what to do when you're in a situation of great uncertainty, how to manage uncertainty. And the whole thing is designed around working with situations that have occurred that you think shouldn't have occurred, and what do you do when you face them. But it's designed in such a way that the students can run them anytime, anywhere, with smaller communities in their homes, in their families, at the university, in student clubs. And I love it when students are doing it in small clubs here on campus. This is something that is popping up more and more. So we're very excited the way community has taken these. Some students are doing a smaller version of this course for the incoming students voluntarily in the summer program.
That's so cool. I mean, as you're talking, everything I'm just like value, value. Like you guys have created this ecosystem of value, not only for your students, but for their families, for your community. I mean, I can imagine too, just being in Silicon Valley, surrounding employers, like I could see these being little micro workshops within the employers too, right? Like these are all very relevant, but come back to just high value from you guys that you're offering to all. Um, Truly, I don't say that lightly. I'm very critical of higher ed, but there is just so much value coming from you guys. It's really, I like speechless how exciting it is. Okay, let's talk about faculty development a little bit. Let's switch because at a lot of universities, again, this is a way that you guys are really different. I'm going to keep saying this. At a lot of institutions, faculty is pretty passive, right? It's like, here's some self paced modules, or here's a faculty hub. And if you get stuck somewhere, come to our faculty hub and sift through 300 pages of PDFs, and you'll find the answer somewhere, right? But again, San Francisco Bay is doing things a little bit differently. So you guys are focusing more on some meaningful workshops that are really important topics. Can you just kind of unpack a little bit how you guys are different, how you're doing this differently?
Yeah, conceptually, we picked some things where we believed everyone, all of our colleagues, should not just know these, but should be able to understand how to practice these within the classroom. There is a custom framework we designed at SFBU so that everyone can be trained within that, and then we can also measure our growth within that. And that is called the PERS framework, PERS. That education should be personalized, and that personalized means a lot. What happens within the classroom, like relational pedagogy using principles from universal design learning. It should be relational. It should be so P is personal, E is experiential, um, the R is relational, and S is student centered. And the idea is that when we want to ask faculty members constantly that how would you convert this framework into a lived experience, into a classroom, and it should not be abstract. How will it change your teaching? But again, just posing it as a question, we went backwards again. And we didn't assume that our colleagues know of this. In higher ed, we as professors assume we know a lot, but most of us have not been taught how to teach. And what we do in the classroom is what we think worked for us. And honestly, what worked for us is completely irrelevant, because all of us went to college. Even if we went to college like 5, 10 years ago, it's irrelevant to what's happening now.
Yep.
And so we don't assume that they would know that by default. So we go through different experiences of helping faculty understand what PERS looks like in action. So our fall welcome to faculty starts with a mandatory uh, week that mandatory in a sense that it's mandated for me that I have to design a series of experiences for faculty to welcome them back to the campus. But then faculty are there not by accident. It's a part of our culture that they have to be there during that week. And what we do within that is we create lots of experiences in understanding what universal design for learning would look like in a classroom. We, for example, try to understand what pedagogical practices would work when you know that lots of students in the classroom are neurodivergent, and then we convert them into practices. So faculty, for example, if you are a part of the workshops, you might come up with one of your courses and say, I hope that in this course I walk out with multiple meaningful activities that would help students who are suffering from trauma, and I should be able to take care of them. And when you walk out, we would have given you many strategies to work around them. So, what do we work specifically on? We try to help faculty understand what is universal design for learning, and then implement those strategies within the classroom. Imagine you would have a huge or sort of a process that you go through, and it gives you scores on where does your course rate in terms of accessibility, in terms of relatability, instead of another very important part of us is creating culturally relevant and sustainable pedagogies. So do not erase certain parts of existence just because we're not aware of them. And really shifting the lens that what is the value that's available in the classroom when you have multiple cultures, identities present within a certain classroom? How does your relationship with content change as a consequence? And this is something very meaningful that we help our faculty understand. We also benefit from the fact that a large part of our community also represents different cultures, different identities. And so it's easier for them to understand that how do you extract value from this diversity. So training faculty in ideas within universal design for learning, helping them unpack what student-centered design looks like, how not to be a sage on the stage. That's what we are really working hard on, helping faculty convert classroom um, into real experiences that continue to happen. And students would not expect to be within the classroom just as passive recipients, but also understand that the content cannot be effectively delivered without their active participation. So you bring that in. One of the most important things we train our faculty in is rethinking assessments. So if you continue to do the regular homework, quiz, paper, final medium of assignments, you are going to constantly be upset about the developing technologies that are making the traditional assignments completely archaic and irrelevant. And so and we'll talk about that perhaps later as well, as a consequence, one needs to be very mindful that if these pedagogical experiences are delivered and we know that new tech, AI, and many other things are emerging, what should our assessments look like? So even going to the fundamental question of why am I assessing? What do I want them to know? And then going backwards in making those experiences visible through different assignments. Like students are perhaps able to explain certain ideas through a model United Nations. Students are doing lots of role play assignments. Students can do mini TED style talks. Students are able to express themselves not just in a written medium, but they can choose to sketch, draw, maybe sculpt if someone does that. And so many different mediums are embraced as a part of our teaching process, both in terms of delivery and also in terms of receiving what the students have produced. So we have constant round the year trainings that happen with faculty, with all of us go with the mindset that we don't know what this is and we're trying to be better at it. The CEPI, the center that I run here, Center for Empowerment and Pedagogical Innovation, is not a center of repair for struggling faculty, which most centers for teaching and learning are. That, oh my God, you're struggling faculty, we'll refer you there and you'll come back better. This is a place where we are constantly questioning how higher ed is, how the world around us is changing, how should higher ed change, and how should we continue to help our colleagues grow within that framework. So there is a lot of common language that we have developed as a consequence in the past 8 months since CEPI was created. And we continue to work on that as a part of our identity and existence, and not a bonus option for faculty to do as a part of faculty development.
I I keep thinking about the assessment piece because obviously this is this is big in higher ed right now, right? We're frustrated with AI but then we're like, here, write a paper for your final. Well, you can use AI very easily to write a paper. I had a class maybe a couple semesters ago, and the instructor said, you can do anything. Your final is anything, anything you want to do to show what you've learned in the class, how it's applicable, right? You can literally do anything. Someone wrote a song. Someone made a music video. Someone made a quilt. I mean, and it's like you couldn't have used AI to make a quilt. Um, there were just someone made a board game, like a tangible board game. It was mind blowing to see how wide of just responses there were. And I was like, you couldn't have used AI for really, you could have brainstormed with AI, and maybe that's a great way to use AI. You could have said, how can I develop, maybe help me with the rules. But in terms of the physical product, AI couldn't have done that.
True. Absolutely. If we understand that these tools are available, then I think the first stage is that we should be able to really understand how we use them for creativity ourselves, and then help students be creative with it. And I think faculty are, I think, struggling with the very first phase, that how to be creative and responsible and agile with these tools, just like they have been before. I mean, the spelling and grammar check helped everyone to type faster. Um, we are thinking of it, I think, from a very different lens, or we continue to be threatened by it. And higher ed will be threatened by it. And if these threats are real, if we do not respond to the archaic ways of the way we have been operating for a very long time.
Absolutely. Okay, so I was going to sit on faculty development a little bit longer, but we are heading into AI. So let's move there because AI is playing a pretty big role with SFSU or SFBU right now. You guys have embraced it in a pretty hands-on way. Talk about that. How are you guys currently using AI in your classroom?
Yeah, I think we're one of the few institutions that have an AI strategist on board as well. We're thinking of all functions of the university um, to be rethought with the presence of AI. What does it mean? What can we do with it? In the classroom, it looks very interesting. Um, we work with a we work with a very small company that build custom design solutions for universities the way they need it instead of ready-made solutions. And the first thing we did with them was that understanding the diversity of students within our classrooms and the way we think about teaching very differently, where students have to bring themselves in the classroom in a very different way. There could be multiple questions about not just the process of learning, but also in the absence of a textbook, how are they learning? Because they're used to looking at a chapter a week. So we built a custom bot for our gen ed curriculum for each class. It's like a TA, and this TA is trained every week on all the possible experiences the instructor is thinking about that. So our Gen Ed courses, the syllabi which are designed, are not regular syllabi. There's an instructor handbook with it. It's like 100-page document that thinks about every week, why have we chosen certain resources, which are those resources, and what is the experience we want to give to the student. And there's a lot of stress on experience. So imagine it from a user experience lens, that you create an app, what different things a user can do with it. We do similar things, that this is the experience we want to create in the classroom. This is the learning outcome. This is a range of content. These are the possible experiences. So that TA, the AI TA, is trained within those experiences. So when you are in the classroom, the students can either open it real time or do it after the classroom and say, I use a term that's a jargon, or that is something that they missed in the last class. They just ask this TA real time. The professor used the term soundtrack. Is he talking about music? And no,
Mhm.
not in this course. He's talking about what you're thinking. And here is how it worked, la 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 la. And this is designed in a very different way, where it does not answer or solve the problem for you. It gives you a framework constantly, to just like a professor would. Hi, professor, how do I go about this? And the professor would say, why don't you think about approaching it this way, instead of saying, oh yeah, the answer is this. So we built it week by week by week for every class. So there's a very customized experience available in the classroom. So if you miss a class, you can go back and say, what happened in the classroom? And instead of just saying we covered 5 concepts, it will talk about the experiences. And it can say, I can act as a lead for you to run those experiences at home. Find a colleague or someone, and if not, then I can be your partner. But let me give you that experience.
Mm.
And then the capacity with that, this is what happens in this course that I'm teaching in the design course. In the leadership course, we have multiple personas that exist of historical figures. And you can feed a lot of content to AI to understand how to act like a historical figure, like how to act like Stalin, how to act like like Julius Caesar. And then the students role play with them. And if the AI is told to be in character, then students can push them really hard about the decisions they made, the choices they made. And then they can also give them contemporary scenarios that, hey, Caesar, you're in 2025 now. This is happening. And then Caesar can act surprised. And then what would their leadership approach be? So there's a whole range of creative experiences that we are doing. I recently built a tool for students where I just realized that with the help of AI, one can create living rubrics. Even if we create a complete rubric and you give student a score on a rubric, the student can still come and say, I dispute that, or I don't understand that particular part, or the rubric itself was a bit vague. And so they have a tool which is sort of a feedback tool before they submit something, where a student can submit an assignment and the AI can say, this is what you're likely to get on the rubric, and that's why. And the student can back and forth and then try to question and understand where are they failing in that part of the process, or where are they struggling in the part of the process. So when a submission does come, they understand what the rubric was expecting them to achieve, what was it designed for. This is what's happening in the classroom. But this is when everything has been designed. I also asked the question, what if we use this extensively to think about how should the experience be designed? And again, with that challenge in mind that our colleagues really don't know how to do these things. And so we created a series of experiences where, again, this acts not as a TA this time, but acts as sort of a senior colleague that's asking you a series of questions. And for example, there is one experience we have created with an AI that faculty experience twice or thrice a year when they come in as a part of the faculty development workshops. And one of them is that think about an area that you absolutely love and think about your discipline. So one can say, I am a chemist. Like, great. And what do you absolutely love? And they can say, oh, chocolates. Like, great. We will design a course around at the intersection of chemistry and chocolates. And it starts with that thought. But then it says, instead of thinking of a textbook right away, if someone is to understand the experience at the intersection of chemistry and chocolates, what do you want them to understand? Taste, response to certain uh, colors of chocolate when it happens, the role of color in designing something, um, the texture. Do you want to understand that? Does some sort of biology come in? Does some sort of neurology come in? What about the process of creating something, ownership, branding, whatever that is? So you think about the learning outcomes, and then you go back to the process. And what's happening in this is that the AI constantly talks to the faculty, says, let's think about what do you want students to achieve. So without faculty either explicitly realizing this is backward design in which they're going in. And then it asks them questions. For example, when they write the learning outcomes, it can tell them, hey, they look a bit vague. And I know that you are perhaps creating them for fun right now. I know you can create tangible learning outcomes as well. And here is what they could look like. And so, as a part of their process, they start like that. Then it asks them about experiences in the classroom and not content again. And then faculty start thinking about, I think my students would be going on some chocolate design experiences. Maybe we'll be creating our custom chocolate. So it then starts thinking about those experiences. And then it starts thinking about what kind of different content areas are going to help students in that process. And then it gives them a challenge. What if your course had no final exam, no mid exam, and you cannot give written assignments? How would you assess? And I know you're super creative. And the faculty are like, of course I'm creative. And then they come up with completely different set of ideas. And when they're struggling, it says, how about using animation in the course? How about using students these days read a lot of mangas and other comics? How about featuring comic in this class? And it sounds more in the beginning, faculty are perhaps thinking, is this rigorous enough? And then you ask the question of rigor, and maybe unpack what we mean by rigor. Is it regurgitating what I've heard in the classroom, or is it creating something? And so by the end of that process, they have a very polished course that has made them, and maybe they'll never teach it, but the idea is that we made them not just think, but go through the whole process of backward design, understanding if your course is going to respond to the different asks within the universal design of learning framework. And are you making students do more than just think? And is there some action being a part of that? So this is again the way AI is coming in as a phenomenal support tool. Because if I keep telling everyone, it's possible they don't like a colleague coming and tell them, hey, don't assess this way. Like, who are you to tell me?
Yeah,
But when it's happening in a much safer environment with a custom design experience where you know that no one is going to see this conversation you're happening, you can be more open, you can be more honest, and perhaps be more flexible for learning as well.
absolutely. And I think about, curriculum design is like my ultimate love and passion. It's what I do. How many conversations I've had with faculty about textbook dependencies, right? Like, stop designing courses around a textbook. It's bad course design. It's not good for our students. We should be in the clouds first, right? And I think that's what you're ultimately having faculty do. But like you said, in a very kind of safe little closet where if they have a dumb idea or a wild idea, I used to work with a law school and they were bringing their law classes online. And that was really hard for them mentally because they had been trained that way, like you said, right? They went to traditional law classes on ground. And so then they're like, our students must go to a law library. And I'm like, well, what if there's not a law library within 200 miles of them? Then what, right? Um, but it would take like 10 conversations before they would finally start to go like, I have kind of a wild idea. What if we did this? And I'm like, that's not a wild idea. That's a wonderful idea. That's the direction, but it would take like 10 to 15 conversations before I could get them in like a safe spot to kind of, I say, dream a little bit, right? You're getting them there probably much faster with AI because they can play around without feeling like it's a dumb or a crazy idea.
Correct. They can play with lots of different ideas. And I think also the nature of the institution where they're encouraged to play with ideas and there's a lot of support for those ideas is also a very conducive environment to be more playful, to be more creative. I think sometimes the structure of how the higher education design itself stops people from being creative. And they are thinking about, will the board of studies approve this? Will the boards of faculty approve this? Or if I design this course, will my colleagues in that discipline that I'm connecting with become mad at me and say, what is this doing here? What would the purists say? What is this course doing in the electives or the other framework? And so a lot of those thoughts perhaps act as a barrier. So if you bring it within a playful environment, even for institutions that do have lots of these barriers, as long as it's a creative way to play with ideas, perhaps people will go about it. And that's the first stage of embracing different ideas. And for most colleagues, when they do this for the first time, when they do a cross-disciplinary course design workshop, it's a surreal experience because they never thought that their ability to teach outside of their discipline could be massive if they partner with someone or if they bring their personal interests within the domains in which they're working.
Totally. Now, this actually brings me to another question I had for you. When we first talked, you talk about faculty, bringing faculty in, the amount of training you guys do. I assumed you guys rely on full-time, tenured professors. I was pretty shocked to learn that you guys are able to achieve this with an adjunct model because your adjunct model doesn't look like other institutions. Once again, you guys are doing things differently. And so you have your adjunct model, you have your curriculum, you don't have a rigid governance process. Like, this is so fundamentally different from all the other schools. How does this work?
It's designed to be very lean. And the idea is what is it that you want to produce for students and how to reduce the number of layers that allows great work to appear. That's the challenge. And this is usually lost within higher ed, where the conversations are centered around other goals and not really creating these experiences at a faster pace, because that's perhaps not a goal. So for us, it's possible because of multiple things. One is our size is very small. When you are a much smaller college, at peak capacity, we'll have around 2,000 students on this campus, but currently the student body is around 600. It's easy to have very quick communication established because of the size. Um, that's the one thing that plays in our favor. The second is not having tenure. Not having tenure makes it easier for us to think about the experiences we want to create for our community and faculty without being burdened with lots of other issues, apart from strengths of being of tenure, a lot of issues that it brings, frankly, to higher ed, a lot of resistance that comes in bringing any change because of that framework. So, and also the third thing is it would not be wise to not benefit from the range of skills and experiences available in the Silicon Valley.
Mm.
There is so much that happens here where people are really on top of their field, and it's the most leading edge work not is not necessarily always happening in the universities anymore. It's happening outside of them, and that is a very important part of being in a university, how to creatively think and how to creatively implement those ideas. And Silicon Valley is a great place to do that. So designing an adjunct model that acknowledges that there is extraordinary talent that's available in the fields that we are engaging with is important for us. And if we rely on a tenured contract, we would not be able to bring them in. And the second part is acknowledging that they might be brilliant in their field, but they might not know how to convert those experiences in the classroom. So knowing that ahead. So when approaching someone, we share our idea of what we want pedagogical experiences to look like and our desire to benefit from the strength in their discipline and domain, especially the leading edge work they do. And if there is a synchronization of ideas and we harmonize on the idea that yes, if both are available, then the classroom experience would be phenomenal. Then SEPI comes in to think about how do we give you these experiences, and this faculty comes in, or this potential faculty member comes in, that this is the most interesting piece that I want to do. And then comes the governance challenge. They say that, say your course in large language models is a year old. They're like, yeah, a year old in higher ed is like yesterday. And they're like, no, I don't think you should be teaching that in such a course. There are courses where, of course, um, some ideas do not change this rapidly. So if I'm teaching Newtonian mechanics, of course, that's a different domain. But when we're teaching these higher level electives constantly, where a lot of action and practice is coming in, this agility is critical. And so then to think about how not to now be stuck in multiple layers of approval is critical. So again, we design it in such a way that there is academic oversight, could be the chair directly, could be the dean, and but the process needs to be very fast. And the way you can do that is by creating again the frameworks I talked about in the beginning, the PERS framework. If the framework is available, well designed with AI support, you feed in the syllabus, it can tell you very quickly where does it lack. That it commits to be this, but there's no evidence of that. Or your assignments are pretty traditional. It gives you a score like 3 by 10. Your assignments will not achieve what the institution is trying to do. Here are some examples. And so one can really automate a lot of those processes where universities institute multiple levels because they want to make sure that the product is robust, the courses are robust. You can still achieve that, but without worrying about those levels. So we are very fast in making these decisions. What's the consequence? We have a curriculum that is as current as it could be. It changes at a much, much rapid pace. There is a lot of acceptance for courses evolving very quickly. And of course, we have then these frameworks that if you have a multiple section course that's available, then how does us govern that? How does one manage that? And that again can happen through, again, very smart administration, that uh, the preparation to the courses is designed in such a way that when the time of delivery comes, if you're focusing a lot on experience, then the classroom would look very interesting, irrespective of now who's teaching it. In many ways, when the courses are designed like that, they become somewhat instructor agnostic as well, because you become the guide on the side now.
Yep. And I think, again, what is interesting about you guys is there's kind of two main curriculum models in higher ed right now, right? There is the faculty is a tenure professor or even an adjunct, but they own the entire course, right? They can change it from term to term to term. There's no centralization. That's the faculty own it. Or there's that more centralized approach, right? Where faculty can post announcements and grade, but there is no changing the curriculum and it changes maybe every 3 to 5 years. You guys have been like, we don't have to choose between these models. We can make our own that puts the students, right at the center while giving faculty. I think the value that faculty bring is that industry insight. And when we make them use a centralized curriculum for 5 years, we're minimizing their value, right? Because we're like, we know you're valuable. We know you're in the field right now, but use this curriculum that was designed 5 years ago and just teach it and make it work. And when your students are upset about it, just tell them it's fine. You guys are like, no, we don't have to choose either of those models. We choose option C, which is design our own.
Absolutely. And you're so spot on that people who are so skilled, they come into the field and we say, hey, we know that you're fresh out of this latest experience, but here's a syllabus that was designed by a great professor X many years ago. It's one of the most loved courses at the university. And you look at the curriculum and you say, yeah, it's great, but there are parts of that that might need changing. And then you're put into a lot of red tape. If you do this, then someone X would do that. A lot of colleagues might get upset that why are you doing it this particular way and not this way. So yeah, I think this is not very helpful in terms of student experience, and it's no surprise that a lot of students do complain about the relevance of the work that they are doing or what they're studying, and struggling to connect it with the real world, so-called real world experiences when they go out. um, and I hope that our model, the way we are doing it, is going to be very helpful in terms of removing those barriers, because the person that was teaching them this course is most likely the next manager they're going to work with in the field.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Anzar, we're here out of I literally could have talked about this for like 3 hours. And I'm excited that we're going to have a part two to talk about. I have a long list of questions that we didn't get to. Um, Thank you so much for being here. I mean, you guys, I want to work at San Francisco Bay University. Like, this is really cool work. Um, so cool. And you guys are creating such an awesome model for the higher ed space. I hope, and I think right now you guys are setting really good foundation too. I know you talked about 600 students, but I think I'm like, man, I just want to see your enrollment skyrocket, which you're probably like, yeah, me too. But I just want to see you guys thrive to show, like, when you put the students right at the center and you think about their experience and you remove all the hurdles and obstacles, this is what you can achieve and everyone can win, right? Like, you guys, your institutional goals are the same as the student goals. It's all aligned. I want you guys to, I think you guys are going to win with this model.
Thank you. I think one thing that I probably didn't mention is how affordable this is. We're doing all of this by making sure that higher education does stay very, very affordable. So you can graduate without any loans, which is, again, a reality in which we live in. And it's a very diverse community. And as you said, I really hope that once we are a bit more mature in terms of what we're doing, the goal is that the enrollments should be much higher. A lot more people should have the ability to benefit from what we are producing.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned the affordability part because you guys are able to do all of these awesome things while not adding extra costs to students. And that's an important piece of it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really valued our conversation and I can't wait to see. I'm going to keep my eyes on you guys because I think you're off to the races.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It was a pleasure coming here. Thanks for hosting me. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
You too.